When I think about hiring excellence for an organization, I do believe that in order to achieve the best possible outcomes, teams need to be aligned. I think that a lot of hiring managers in other functions believe that recruiting is there just to churn volume and pop deals. That's not the case. We got to pitch the culture. We got to pitch the work to these candidates. And so we have to have the right story. And we got to feel good about the things that we're talking about to these people, because it's a life-changing event, taking another job. You are making a life-changing decision that affects your financial stability. So because recruiting and talent is so core to building an organization, we need to make sure that we're hiring the right people.
Welcome to Offer Accepted, the podcast that elevates your recruiting game. I'm your host, Shannon Ogborn. Join us for conversations with talent leaders, executives, and more to uncover the secrets to building and leading successful talent acquisition teams. Gain valuable insights and actionable advice from analyzing cutting-edge metrics to confidently claiming your seat at the table. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Offer Accepted. I'm Shannon Ogborn, your host, and this episode is brought to you by Ashby, the all-in-one recruiting platform empowering ambitious teams from seed to IPO and beyond. I am super excited to be here today with Jeff Winter. He is currently the VP of Talent Acquisition at Grammarly. Prior to that, he was the first recruiter at Chime turned VP of Talent. The company went from 100 to 1,500 at his departure. 26 years in the industry, and spent the vast majority of his professional career running Gravity People, a search agency that goes back to 98 when MySpace was losing members and Webvan was a thing. I'm just super excited to have you here today, and we're going to get into the topic of your first 100 days as a new TA leader, and definitely no one better to chat about that than you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the intro. I'm excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, I know that you have really just gotten started at Grammarly, and I'm curious to hear a little bit about your thought process as to how you go about getting yourself up to speed. I know you and I have talked a little bit about sort of the concept of a listening tour, and would love to hear more about how you go about that.
I'm fresh in it. I think I might be day, 45. So, everything's new. I think that on the listening tour, I can kind of speak to my experience in the most recent days. It's just getting to know the business, getting to know the stakeholders a little bit, obviously getting to know the team because there's a pre-existing team in the organization. You kind of want to see how things are set up. It is about talking to people that are interested in talking to you, people that have opinions, people that have thoughts, people that are in a lot of ways culture carriers or have been at the organization for a long period of time. They can give you historical information that you can then kind of pull into your thinking on how there might be areas that you could improve the organization. But I think it's about getting to understand like how the organization came to be and what was the process and who were the players. And you get into companies that are either new or if they're 10 plus years old, like it is about understanding the history behind how things got to the point that they either made them successful or put them into a steady state. So I think that talking to the people is probably the most important thing. And then, of course, understanding the systems and things like that.
Definitely. And taking a step back, one question that I probably should have asked at the jump is, why should new TA leaders create a plan for their first 100 days? What can kind of break if you don't have a plan going in?
Everybody, what's the saying? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? Like, listen, for any company that anybody goes into, regardless of your role, there's no playbook for what you're about to encounter. There's fundamental thinking. There's like things that you hold true to be pillars of how things should be structured. But it's nice to think about those things, but it may not fit for the company that you're going into. When you come into an organization, you probably have a straw person of an idea of what you want to tackle. You might go in there and be like, oh, they actually have this sorted out and it's legit. Or that's an area that could be better. So these are the things that I'm thinking about. But you have to be as fungible and like as flexible as you possibly can be, because when you think about the change that you have as a talent leader and how you impact the business and how you work with stakeholders, those are new relationships. And they have a certain way of doing things. You're going to have to influence them to potentially a better way with bigger outcomes or better outcomes. And so I think that, just being objective, I think is important. So as part of my core plan, it's reminding myself to be objective, go in with best intentions, come in positive, and like try to rework a couple of things if necessary.
For sure. I've definitely seen situations happen before where someone comes in and they do exactly what you say. They just immediately rip everything out and replace it with everything they've done before. And that can definitely hurt trust and credibility. How do you, as a talent leader, build that trust and credibility, not just only in your team, but within the greater organization? Because talent touches every single organization or every single job function in the organization. And it's not just your team that you need to build credibility with. It's also the VP of engineering. It's also the head of marketing. It's all of the people that you're going to be hiring for.
Oof. There's so much good stuff here. I'm just thinking about like a recent instance where I came into the office on a Monday whistling, and there were a couple leaders there, and it was 8:00 in the morning, and they're like, "Oh, you're in a great mood," but coming in with a positive attitude and showing up in a way that suggests that you're there to better an organization or be part of something special. And I hope that people can feel that and sense the enthusiasm so they can get on board too, because there's probably going to be a few things that we would have to change with a stakeholder, a process, a lot of things, systems, whatever. And I think that going in with the right attitude, a smile on your face, just like, hey, listen, I'm honest, I'm open to feedback and all these things and learning. Like, you have to have a learning mindset, but the positivity thing is like super, super important. And hopefully they see that. They see that you're actually here trying to solve problems, and you just want to basically scale a business or further reinforce the culture or the mission, elevate the hiring processes, make things more efficient internally with systems and tools.
Definitely. And I feel like it's better if you can show that you're trying to solve problems, not non-problems, because that I feel like can actually derail trust pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You can erode trust and you can make yourself, worst case scenario, make yourself obsolete as a leader. Again, it goes back to the game plans, right? Some game plan works for some organizations, but if you try to enforce a game plan with no logic or without thinking about like the overarching impact it could have, negative impact, both on the company itself and your reputation, that's not a good thing. I've seen it a couple different times where the playbook person comes in, they don't last long, or they erode trust.
I do think that a lot of this, to some of your earlier points, is about asking the questions and asking the right questions. And you touched a little bit on culture. How do you go about taking an inventory of the culture? And the reason I'm asking is because I have found that culture plays such a big role in how the talent team operates, the expectations that are on them, and how they facilitate relationships with the business. And so what are the right questions or the good questions to ask when you're trying to understand what the culture is really like and getting an honest answer for that?
Getting to understand the culture just comes through, communication and conversations with people, and like trying to get a sense of, if you were to reconcile all that information in your head, like what is the culture truly like? It goes back to me saying you have to be objective. When you come into these situations, the same thing goes when you're actually talking to people about the culture, because the things that I take into account is how long has a person been there? How many cycles have they seen? You have people in the recruiting function out of these companies that scale that have seen it all. They've seen the scale, they've seen the slowdown, they've seen the layoffs, they've seen the pandemic, they might have seen another round of layoffs, and they continue to pick themselves up and keep moving forward to tell the message of an organization. That's powerful. That's what makes recruiting so important, because these folks have knowledge of the business and the stakeholders and the history. And then you go talk to somebody new that's been there for, 6-8 months or something. What do you think? And they're like, oh, it used to be this way, but there's these things and there's these challenges that I'm working on. They're super cool, right? Like, you see that vibe and that energy coming out of that individual, and you just try to like pull this together to formulate your own thinking about what the company culture is, what it's been, and which way it's going, right? And then you can start, and I think about it from like a recruiting standpoint, like I'm a recruiter, right? So, and I love to do executive search from time to time, but I need to be able to tell the story. And if I'm able to articulate the culture to a candidate, it lands way better, right? Especially if I'm open and honest, which I always am. Let's be honest with each other. There's hair on every dog. Any company that you go into, there's going to be some funky stuff that's going on that you're going to have to unpack.
Yeah, and I think encouraging people to be honest is really from the standpoint of I can't work on and fix or evolve what I don't know about. So the more honest people can be, the better off, the culture and everything will be in the long term.
Yeah, it goes back to like just being well intentioned and being open and honest and talking to people. Like, you're here to make it better. And yeah, for what it's worth, like in some cases, and I'm not speaking about Grammarly, but like there are people that are just like, I don't want to be here for this next cycle. I don't have the energy, or this isn't going to be interesting to me. Like, so it's just normal.
Yeah, certainly what I've realized, especially working smaller, like pre-IPO companies, is the person who got you from A to B is, maybe not the person to get you from B to C and so on, because people have different passions about different stages of the business. And so I think the more clarity the business can provide to the stage that they're at, the more people can opt in or opt out to kind of what's ahead.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer there's a stage of companies and people throughout the life cycle. Like I've gone through, I've seen it, executives leaving organizations because they took it from, the 1 to 5. And then somebody else has to come in and reorient the team in some way or do something different. So, and that's just the way that it is. Like if you take a look at, I love the build. I've done 2 builds. Grammarly's not a build. There's a different challenge here. There's definitely some new learnings. But I think that just recognizing that as a technology professional, there are stages and there are things that you want to accomplish and things that you want to try out. And that's just the way that this business works.
You made an interesting comment about the difference in stages, and, sometimes you come in and there's no process, there's no systems. In some cases you come in and there is an operational process, there are systems. If you're coming into a situation where there already is process and tech stack, as a new leader, how do you go about understanding that and optimizing those systems that exist currently?
It goes back to that listening tour to some degree and getting to know not just the people, but the systems, and like better understanding how they're being used or if they're being used at all. And if they are, I don't like to say it, but what's the ROI of the business, right? Because I've been in companies where there's situations where you come in and companies spending $2 million on agencies and they've made a handful of hires seemingly. And you're like, well, wait a minute. If that's $2 million and you guys are using these systems and these agencies, I can make an assessment relatively quickly and say, hey, listen, CFO, I can get you 4 or 5 times the output of the agencies, get you more people, and actually build a talent function that is going to be of a lesser cost, right? And then from there, you can kind of like build the systems around it and put something together. When you come into a new organization, though, and there's systems in place, chances are in any bigger company, a lot of people are just buying solutions. A lot of companies just buy things to fix a singular problem, and then they just try to squish it together with something else that might be people related or something. I think that there's a buy versus build mentality that might be a little flawed, meaning that I don't think that buying something for a single business case makes sense. I think actually using the resources you have and like building, as an example, executive dashboards for managing headcount. Headcount's a huge thing, right? The point being is that like when you go in and take a look at things, you're like, well, how does that make sense? And why does that work? And, you get into these situations where you're looking at contract terms, trying to figure out if there's an opportunity to implement something else under a single platform, right? Like where you can solve a bunch of these problems, but it is very difficult to make that assessment and have those conversations with people, because then you're talking about change management and there's a bunch of stuff that goes into it that you need to kind of like think about as you're making these decisions. If you're going to change something, if you happen to be in a situation where you kind of just come into an org where everything works, that's a sweet gig. It's a really, really good gig.
They don't even need you.
They don't even need you.
The thing with tools too is that sometimes people have just bought tools. They had no change management. They've had no adoption. And now you're just sitting there with line item after line item of tools that nobody even uses. And the waste is can
Oh,
be kind of off the charts. It's wild when you come into an organization and you ask that question of what are the tools and how are they being used?
yeah,
And sometimes it's like, well, we have these tools, and sometimes people don't even know that they haven't canceled a contract. Like, it's pretty wild
it's crazy.
out there.
It's like the App Store, but for companies. Like, right? You're like, oh, I had that. Didn't know that. How many seats? Oh, great. How long's the contract go? Oh, crap. And I've gone into plenty of finance meetings, and we'll go line by line, and they continue to poke and push on this thing. And I'm like, are we going to have this conversation again? Out of all the organizations, this talent function is probably the most financially responsible when it comes to tooling and systems. Like, I don't want to manage them. I certainly don't want to have to go and negotiate with vendors all the time, right? Although I do like that. But yeah, it's that in itself is an exercise. And if you can reduce the amount of tools, I love them. I love my finance partners. But if you can spend less time talking to them about the dollars and cents, you're in a better position. It shows that you're actually being responsible with how you're putting together the tech stack.
I feel like people often don't think about when they are entering into an organization is talking to finance, because sometimes they have information that talent teams don't have. Sometimes there's not overlap between talent leaders, and so the person's already left, and then the new person is coming in, and there's institutional knowledge missing. There's gaps of what's there, what's in place. And so talking to finance, you actually can find out quite a bit of what the hell tools do we even have, because sometimes the team legitimately, not to their fault, doesn't know.
Yep. So for what it's worth, here's a little thing that I do. And I think that now after mentioning it, people might recognize like, oh, he did that. Coming into a new organization, there's 3 people you make friends with as a talent leader or as a recruiter or whatever. IT, the strongest engineering, like IC architect person that has the most influence, is well respected. And your finance pal. That's it. You want to get things done? Those are the people you talk to. I need finance to believe in me. I need this engineering person to believe in me. And IT, hey, we might have to do some random things here that would require you to move fast on a SSO or something like that. And I'm not going to push, but like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of thing.
Absolutely. Relationships are give and take. There has to be something on the table for that other person. With finance, it's ultimately I'm trying to save us money. And so help me understand where we're spending and what we can do to consolidate tools, for example. And there's a lot to it, but I think that's great advice on those 3 people.
Yeah, I think the perception finance has in a lot of ways, on at least in recruiting, is that we're here just to hire for the sake of hiring in a lot of ways, not putting any constraints on it, like kind of throwing people at a wall type of deal. That's not the way it should be run. You will get no respect. You will not get a partnership, and you won't be able to build that muscle as an organization on being financially responsible. Like, if you think about it, recruiting, we can govern how quick and how slow we go. And if it's in lockstep with finance, then we can manage our forecast better, because one of the most expensive things, or the most expensive things in a business, is headcount.
Definitely.
Right?
Well, any last thoughts on the first 100 days as a new TA leader? Anything else we didn't cover that you're like, the people have to know?
The people have to know. I think that for what it's worth, and I think that a lot of people become unsettled when a new leader comes into an organization. Like, are they going to have a view of things? Are they going to have a playbook? Are they actually going to, the reorg's always a big question and stuff. I think that the biggest thing for me, aside from being objective and honest and stuff, it's like, recognize that people are going through these psychological cycles. They're concerned about psychological safety, right? Or they're concerned about, and that's just with the team. Stakeholders, they don't trust you. It's going to take a minute, right? You're going to have to show up and show that you're here with the best intentions. Just coming to work to do your best work is probably the best you can do with the best possible attitude.
That's the importance of continuous improvement. After 100 days, you see how it's going, and then you keep going.
The funny thing is, it's like, it's the first 100 days. You don't even remember the first 100 days. You don't remember the second 100 days. You don't remember the year. Next thing you know, you're year 5, and you're like, what the hell did I accomplish? And you're just...
A lot.
I
think for any professional, but especially in talent, where things can often feel more thankless and just like you're just always in a go mode. Mm-hmm. I think the team, it really resonates with them when you can take that step back and say, hey, like, you guys did this. We did it, right? But it's hard to do that when the mode is go.
When the mode is go, it almost becomes, it's interesting because I've had plenty of retros and team meetings, all hands and things like that to look back at like past accomplishments. When you're going through those decks and you're having that presentation with your team, it almost sounds disingenuous to an extent because it's kind of like, you guys all forgot that we did this. Like, this is what happened you hired 740 people in 1 year, right? That's an accomplishment. That's legit. But then when you're in the moment and the mode is go, as you say, it's just one deal after another deal. It used to be you close somebody 15 minutes, you were like, that was awesome. And then you're like, back in it. That's about as much celebration as you got out of it. That also goes in the agency world. It is somewhat of a transactional business at the close, but leading up to the close is something that's very, very personal to me, and getting to know people and getting to know industries. Recruiting is a powerful profession in a lot of different aspects. So I don't want to devalue the close and jumping to the next call, but it takes a lot of freaking work to get to that close. The whole cycle is ridiculous. And I don't think people truly understand, stakeholders truly understand what goes into making the sausage.
Totally. All respect in the world to recruiters. You all are the real MVPs, most certainly.
Yeah. Sorry, I got on my soapbox.
Well, you know what? The world needs to hear it. Recruiters, you are valued. Well, taking kind of a big step back, and I think we've sprinkled this in throughout, but we always love to ask our guests, when you hear hiring excellence, what does that mean to you?
There's so many different interpretations of that, right? When I think about hiring excellence for an organization, I do think about alignment. I do believe that in order to achieve the best possible outcomes, teams need to be aligned. I think that a lot of hiring managers in other functions believe that recruiting is there just to churn volume and pop deals. That's not the case. We got to pitch the culture. We got to pitch the work to these candidates. And so we have to have the right story, and we got to feel good about the things that we're talking about to these people, because it's a life-changing event, taking another job, right? It's right up there, probably not as important, but marriage, right? You are making a life-changing decision that affects your financial stability, the work that you do, professional growth, and all those things. So going back to it, because recruiting and talent is so core to building an organization, we need to make sure that we're hiring the right people. We need to make sure that we have alignment with the business so we can tell that story and hit all the company milestones in a responsible way. In an engineering situation or hiring engineering, it's about like understanding the problems that they're working on and understanding what makes a good interview process. Like, what are the key questions that we want to ask people? You need to make sure that you agree that this is a path forward and how we're going to continue to hire. Once you have an agreement that this is the way that we're going to hire, but the end all be all is like, our big goal is to like solidify an engineering culture, right? Like, we want everybody to be great here, and we want to make sure that we're bringing in the greatest people, not just technically, but they have to adhere to our values or have a same value set, among other things. But once you have that in place, you have that alignment, you know that you guys are on the same team and that you're actually trying to accomplish something pretty significant. And so that's how I think about excellence. It is about like having that conversation, having that agreement, and then working through the interview process to show like what excellence should be based on two parties' decisions or multiple parties' decisions, whatever the case may be.
Well, I feel like there were actually several hot takes just drizzled into hiring excellence, but I guess if you could boil it down into one, what is your recruiting hot take?
If you think about the bigger picture and how companies today, their culture shifts have been significant. It is because there's been such a shift in the talent workforce. There's been, the pandemic, it was a thing. And I don't remember the 3 years that we were involved in it. Like, I really don't.
It was a literal time warp. Like, what is time? What year is it? What happened? We have no idea. It was such a hard time, but no one really remembers what happened.
They don't remember what happened because we were just doing deals.
We were surviving. We were everyone was in kind of a survival state, trying to stay with it,
Yeah. So suddenly it's like you go into that thing, you're like, oh my God, what the hell's going on? Okay, I know work. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do it 12 hours a day. And I'm like, that was unhealthy. And then finally we get into a rhythm. And then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, you got to come back to the office. Okay, well, people are asking why. Well, productivity, collaboration, communication. I don't disagree with it. I think that there's a balance, with guardrails, of course. But people to go through that and come back to work and try to work as a cohesive group and like kind of try to remember what the culture was like. What is it now? Like, oh, we have to interface and have conversations. I don't like that. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that goes on. And then when you put a bar raiser on top of it, that person's also trying to unpack what happened in the last 3 or 4 years. Like, do they truly know what good is like? No, like, don't tell me that you remember what the culture was like 3 years ago.
Part of it is the lack of definition, depending on the organization, can really have an impact on how well or not well someone implements any recruiting process or any specific type of interview. And so I think the lack of definition is really what can get people caught up, or you do things because you always did it. And, we did this when we were 100 people. And so we think it's important to continue to do. So I think the definition and the maybe like lack of evolution can sometimes lead to issues where you don't know why you're doing something anymore, regardless of what type of interview it is.
No, it's true. And that's a good call out. Like, if you look, bar raiser questions, right? Like, have those evolved over the times, given what's happened to society? Not necessarily here. I'm just talking generally speaking. I just think that a lot of these antiquated thinkings are just like not appropriate anymore, unless they've been evolved and somebody's put some time and thought into it and taken into account some of the factors that have made us who we are or what we are as an organization today.
How do we get our recruiting processes to meet the moment, I think, is kind of the big question.
Yep. Somebody used to say, what is it? Hiring the right talent at the right time in the right place. That's somebody. And it's like, yeah, it is meet the moment type of situation. And things need to evolve, and the workforce is going to evolve, and talent acquisition and processes and vetting and all the interviews and stuff, that has to evolve too.
Well, something tells me we could go all day on this, but we're coming up on our time. Where should people go to learn more about you and your work?
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out to me for whatever reason. Probably get more than you're asking for. I tend to talk and ramble, but that, and I don't know, I've kind of thought about, people are trying to convince me to go on the road and do some of these networking events. So, I'll be wandering around looking like I'm lost. That will be me. And so, kind of going to try to just continue to.
I'm at most of these, so I will be your guide.
Are you really?
If I see you wandering, I will be a friend.
Please do.
Jeff, I really appreciate you spending the time with us, and thank you so much for joining us on Offer Accepted.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
This episode was brought to you by Ashby, what an ATS should be, a scalable, all-in-one tool that combines powerful analytics with your ATS, scheduling, sourcing, and CRM. To never miss an episode, subscribe to our newsletter at www.ashbyhq.com/podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.